Space had always been quiet, at least in the region around Sol. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered what might be out there. Some people thought they were alone, the only life in the vast void. Others had long suspected that other civilizations existed, far beyond their reach. Humanity had spent decades quietly exploring its own solar system, sending probes and stations to distant planets, learning, watching, preparing. But nobody had expected the galaxy beyond the Kuiper Belt to take much notice of Earth. Until now. Far from Earth, beyond the orbit of Saturn, Dominion scouts moved cautiously through space. These alien fleets had ruled over countless systems, controlling weaker species with military might and strict enforcement. They had seen humanity as insignificant, a young and isolated species that posed no real threat. Reports about human progress, about their fledgling space fleets, were treated as exaggerations or rumors. Humans had never fought beyond their own system, and the Dominion assumed it would always be that way. But then something unusual appeared on the scouts' sensors. A strange object drifted near Jupiter, enormous and seemingly alive with energy. It was not a natural body, not an asteroid or moon, and it definitely wasn't one of the Dominion's own war machines. At first, the scouts assumed it must be a mistake. Their instruments, though advanced, sometimes misread signals. Still, the readings persisted. Something out there was moving in ways that no human or alien vessel should have been capable of. Back on the Dominion command bridge, generals gathered to review the data. Screens flickered with numbers, scans, and images, but the readings did not make sense. "This object," one general said, frowning, "it has mass far greater than any human craft we've catalogued. Its energy output, it is off the charts. How is this possible?" Another general scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "They are primitive. They barely have the technology to maintain a station around Mars. Surely, they cannot build something capable of moving through Jupiter's orbit and surviving its radiation." Yet even as they debated, the readings continued to worsen. Sensors jammed and unjammed intermittently, giving glimpses of the object's structure only to reveal new anomalies every time. It was huge, larger than any warship the Dominion had ever built. Its shape was unusual, angular but streamlined, almost as if it had been designed to survive in ways their engineers could not understand. Meanwhile, the humans on Earth, or rather the people who had been chosen to oversee the construction of their fleet, worked quietly. In secret shipyards across the planet, massive vessels were being assembled, forged with materials that could withstand pressures and radiation far beyond Earth's orbit. Engineers and scientists moved with a shared sense of purpose. Every weld, every system check, every calculation was made with one goal: to ensure humanity could survive in the galaxy and defend itself against any threat. They did not know the Dominion was watching. They did not know that an entire alien empire had dismissed them for centuries, and yet the humans had learned through their own explorations that intelligence in the galaxy rarely stayed hidden for long. Humanity had always been cautious but persistent. They had built quietly a ship that would make the galaxy rethink what Earth was capable of. As the alien scouts drew closer to Jupiter, the strange object began to react. Energy pulses radiated outward, disrupting sensors and communications. The scouts tried to send warnings back to their fleets, but even the fastest transmissions were interrupted. Systems failed one by one, leaving the aliens scrambling to maintain control. The calm that had once defined space now became a tense, suffocating silence. In the Dominion Command Center, generals began to grow nervous. "What is it doing?" one asked. "Is it armed?" "No," said another, uncertain. "Not in any way we recognize. It's just there. It is moving, yes, but not attacking. Yet every attempt to scan or probe it fails." It was an unprecedented situation. Never before had an object resisted the Dominion's technology so completely. Military simulations ran through every possible scenario, and every one of them ended the same way. The object survived, and the Dominion forces suffered catastrophic losses. The generals whispered among themselves. Some denied what they were seeing. Others panicked quietly, fearing a threat they could not understand. Back on Earth, the ship continued its silent approach toward Jupiter. Its crew, trained in secrecy and discipline, monitored sensors and navigation systems with intense focus. They knew that once the ship was detected, there could be consequences. but they also knew that they were ready. Every system had been tested. Every weapon, defensive and offensive, had been calibrated to perfection. Every crew member understood that this was more than a mission. It was the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. The first visual scan from the Dominion scouts finally revealed the ship in full. It was unlike anything in their records. Massive, sleek, and heavily armored with glowing propulsion nodes and a hull that seemed almost alive in its complexity. The generals could not believe it. They had underestimated humanity, just as they had underestimated countless other species before. But this was beyond anything they had ever seen. Panic spread through the ranks. Orders were given, but hesitation filled the fleet. No commander wanted to make the first move, because every simulation, every experience suggested failure. In that moment, the humans had achieved what few thought possible. They had made an entire alien empire pause, hesitate, and question its own understanding of the universe. The Leviathan, as the humans called it, continued its orbit around Jupiter, silent but powerful. It did not need to fire a single weapon. Its presence alone reshaped the balance of power. Every Dominion officer who saw it realized that they had misjudged humanity. They had assumed Earthlings were weak, vulnerable, and unprepared. Instead, they faced a species that had quietly grown into something that could rival the greatest powers in the galaxy. And for the humans, none of this was about glory or conquest. It was about survival, about proving that Earth could no longer be ignored. Humanity had spent centuries building, learning, and preparing for the day the galaxy would finally take notice. That day had come. As the scouts retreated, struggling to maintain control over their systems, the humans watched and waited. They did not attack, not yet. They only observed, ready to respond if provoked. The galaxy beyond Sol was vast and dangerous, filled with unknown civilizations and unpredictable threats. But humanity had learned something vital. They could no longer be dismissed. They could no longer be ignored. And somewhere far above the icy clouds of Jupiter, the Leviathan drifted silently, a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and determination. It was a warning, a promise, and a herald of the future, all in one. Humanity was ready. The galaxy would soon understand whether it wanted to or not. For the Dominion, the lesson was terrifyingly clear. The humans were no longer a species to be underestimated. Something had changed. Something powerful, something unprecedented. And as long as the Leviathan remained in orbit, nothing would ever be the same again. Space had grown quieter once more, but it was a tense quiet, filled with uncertainty and fear. The Dominion forces pulled back, shaken and unsure, and on Earth, humans went about their work, calm but alert, knowing that their first steps into the wider galaxy had already left a mark that would not be forgotten. No one fired a shot. No battle was fought. Yet the universe had begun to take note of humanity, and the ripple of that moment would spread far and wide. The calm before the encounter had ended. Humanity had made its presence known, and the galaxy would never underestimate it again. The Dominion's war room was buzzing with tension. Generals and strategists moved from station to station, scanning data streams and analyzing every sensor report from the scouts near Jupiter. The object they had detected, huge, powerful, and unlike anything they had ever seen, was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a threat, a puzzle they could not solve, and the fact that it had appeared in their territory without warning made them uneasy. One general leaned over a console, frowning at the fluctuating energy readings. "These readings are impossible," he said. "They should not exist. The human fleet is primitive. Their systems cannot generate this level of energy. And yet..." His voice trailed off as he stared at the screen, unable to reconcile what he saw with his understanding of physics. Other officers murmured nervously among themselves. No one wanted to speak too loudly because in the Dominion, admitting fear or uncertainty in front of superiors could be fatal. Still, the unease was palpable. The numbers on their displays were fluctuating wildly, with pulses of energy emanating from the object in Jupiter's orbit. The Dominion had encountered strange phenomena before. Rogue stars, unstable nebulae, even rogue fleets, but nothing like this. This was deliberate. This was controlled. This was intelligence at work, and it was human intelligence. Meanwhile, in the human command center orbiting Earth, the crew of the Leviathan was monitoring the Dominion fleets carefully. Every movement of the scouts was tracked, every scan analyzed. The humans had anticipated this moment, but they had no desire to escalate conflict unnecessarily. Their goal was clear: demonstrate power, assert their presence, and protect their colonies. They did not seek war, but they were ready if war found them. On the Dominion side, the generals decided to send a closer inspection force. A small fleet of the most advanced scout ships was ordered to approach the Leviathan and gather visual data. The goal was simple: understand the ship, assess its weaknesses, and report back. In theory, it was a routine mission. In reality, no one knew what they were walking into. As the scouts moved closer to Jupiter, they felt a subtle disturbance. Communications began to falter. Sensors went haywire. Navigation systems glitched. One by one, their instruments failed. Panic began to rise among the crews. "Commander, our readings are collapsing," one officer shouted. "We can't get a stable lock on the object." On the Leviathan, the humans watched this quietly, knowing exactly what was happening. Their engineers had designed the ship's systems to interfere with hostile sensors in a controlled way. They had tested it repeatedly in simulations. They knew it would confuse and overwhelm the Dominion scouts. It was not an attack, at least not yet. It was a warning, a demonstration of capability. Back in the Dominion war room, reports came in. Officers' voices shook as they relayed the status of the scouts. All systems failing, communications dead, propulsion anomalies. The generals exchanged worried looks. This was no ordinary ship. It was beyond their understanding. A senior general, known for his calm demeanor, took a deep breath. "Pull the scouts back," he ordered. "We cannot risk losing them. This is not a simple reconnaissance. Something is wrong. Something we do not understand." Reluctantly, the fleet reversed course. But even as they withdrew, the Leviathan made no aggressive move. It did not fire weapons. It did not pursue them. It merely drifted, its presence commanding attention and respect. And that was exactly the point. Humans did not need to strike to show they were powerful. Their technology, their precision, and their intelligence spoke for themselves. The Dominion generals were stunned. Never before had they faced a species that could paralyze a fleet without firing a single shot. Orders were debated, simulations rerun, and strategies considered, but nothing seemed effective. Every plan ended in failure on the holographic displays. No fleet in their history had been rendered helpless in this way, and the realization weighed heavily on them. On Earth, the scientists and engineers who had worked tirelessly to build the Leviathan watched the situation unfold. They knew the Dominion would eventually understand the ship's power, but they also knew patience was a weapon. The humans had prepared not just a vessel, but a strategy. They were demonstrating that Earth was not to be underestimated, that humanity had grown far beyond what the galaxy expected. Meanwhile, in the Dominion Command Center, the debate grew heated. "We underestimated them," one general admitted quietly, almost to himself. "We thought they were primitive. We thought they would never leave their solar system. And now," he shook his head, "now we see that we were wrong." Another officer spoke sharply. "We cannot allow this to continue. We must investigate, understand, and neutralize the threat before it grows further. If we do not, it could destabilize the entire region." But the first general remained silent for a moment, staring at the energy readings on the display. Then he said something that made everyone in the room pause. "Or, we could withdraw. For the first time, we might be facing an enemy we cannot defeat with force." This possibility was unthinkable. The Dominion was a military empire built on conquest, intimidation, and control. Retreat was not a concept they entertained lightly. But as the moments passed and the human ship continued to demonstrate its dominance, the reality became unavoidable. They had misjudged humanity. They had assumed weakness where there was strength, ignorance where there was intelligence, and now, hesitation ruled their hearts. The human crew monitored all of this with quiet discipline. They understood the psychological impact of their presence. They had not engaged the enemy, yet they had already caused confusion and fear. The Dominion had been watching humanity from a distance for centuries, dismissing them as irrelevant. Now they were forced to face the truth. Humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, strategists, and a species that could hold its own against the galaxy's most powerful forces. As the Dominion scouts retreated, the Leviathan remained in orbit, a silent guardian of humanity's solar system. Its sensors recorded every movement, every communication, every reaction from the aliens. Humans did not gloat. They did not celebrate. Their mission was clear: observe, protect, and prepare. The galaxy would soon understand the cost of underestimating Earth. Back on Earth, people went about their lives largely unaware of the unfolding events in Jupiter's orbit. Scientists in orbiting stations adjusted instruments and recalibrated sensors. Engineers tested energy systems. Crew members monitored every alert with careful attention. For them, the mission was routine in its own way, yet historic in scope. They were witnessing firsthand the moment humanity shifted from being a quiet, isolated species to one the galaxy could no longer ignore. The Dominion, meanwhile, convened emergency councils. Generals argued about next steps, about how to address a species that had proven itself capable of paralyzing their fleet. Communications were sent to distant sectors to warn commanders of the anomaly near Jupiter. Yet even as they tried to respond, uncertainty ruled every decision. This was not a war they had planned for. It was a confrontation with intelligence, strategy, and innovation that they had not anticipated. The Leviathan, however, remained calm. Its mission was simple: to show that humans could defend themselves and to send a clear message to the galaxy. Humans did not need to start wars to be respected. Their presence alone was a demonstration of their capabilities. Hours turned into days. The Dominion fleet pulled further back, unwilling to engage directly with a species they could not understand. Every attempt to probe, attack, or communicate was met with resistance, but not in the form of weapons fire. It was strategy, intelligence, and control that the humans wielded. And slowly, the alien commanders began to grasp a terrifying truth. Humanity had changed. For the first time in history, the Dominion experienced hesitation. For the first time, a species had forced them to question their assumptions, to pause, and to reconsider their actions. The humans had done this without firing a single shot. They had done this with precision, patience, and the quiet strength of a civilization that refused to be dismissed. And as the Leviathan continued its silent orbit around Jupiter, the galaxy began to realize that the humans were not the same species they had once underestimated. Humanity had grown, adapted, and prepared for this moment. The Dominion might not yet understand the full extent of the threat or the potential, but they knew one thing with absolute clarity: Earth was no longer a target to be conquered lightly. The calm of space returned, but it was different now. Tension lingered like a quiet storm. The Dominion forces regrouped, unsure of what to do next, and humans, disciplined and patient, continued their watch. They knew the next steps were crucial, but for now their mere presence had altered the balance of power in the solar system. The galaxy would remember this moment, the first time humanity had made an entire empire hesitate, and the Leviathan would remain at the center of that story. The lesson was simple but profound: underestimate humanity at your own peril. The first confrontation was over, but the galaxy's understanding of Earth had changed forever. And for the humans who had watched it all unfold, the knowledge was both humbling and empowering. They were no longer just inhabitants of a small blue planet. They were guardians, innovators, and a force to be reckoned with. The humans aboard the Leviathan were calm, even as the Dominion fleet faltered in their approach. Every movement, every system reading, every signal from the alien ships was being monitored and analyzed. The Leviathan was more than just a vessel. It was a statement, a symbol that humanity had grown beyond the confines of Earth, beyond the assumptions of the galaxy, and that it was ready to defend itself if needed. The crew worked with precision and quiet discipline. There was no panic, no unnecessary chatter. Every officer understood their role. The navigators adjusted positions, ensuring the Leviathan remained in optimal orbit around Jupiter. Sensors were calibrated to detect the smallest anomalies in the approaching alien fleet. Engineers monitored power levels, ensuring the ship could operate at maximum efficiency for days without interruption. Every decision was deliberate, every action calculated. Meanwhile, the Dominion fleet struggled to regroup. Their ships had never encountered anything like the Leviathan. Their targeting systems failed, their communications were disrupted, and their sensors were rendered almost useless. The alien commanders grew increasingly frustrated and anxious. No one could understand how a single human vessel could create such widespread chaos without firing a single weapon. Inside the Dominion Command Center, debates raged. Some generals wanted to attack immediately, believing that overwhelming force could overcome any unknown threat. Others argued for caution, suggesting withdrawal until they could analyze the ship's systems and figure out how to counter it. Tension ran high. This was the first time in centuries that the Dominion had faced an enemy they could not dominate through brute force. On the Leviathan, the humans were aware of these debates. They had predicted the Dominion's reactions and had designed their systems to exploit them. They were not merely defending themselves, they were sending a message. The humans understood that power was as much about perception as it was about firepower. By demonstrating control over their environment and technology, they forced the Dominion to reconsider its assumptions about Earth. The Leviathan itself was extraordinary. Its hull was constructed from a material that absorbed and dispersed energy in ways the Dominion could not detect. Its engines allowed it to maneuver with incredible speed and precision, while also projecting a field that interfered with enemy sensors. From the outside, the ship appeared massive and immovable. From within, it was a marvel of engineering, a combination of human ingenuity, strategy, and foresight. As the alien fleet moved closer, the Leviathan activated subtle defensive measures. Fields of energy rippled around the ship, not as weapons but as deterrents. The Dominion ships experienced minor system failures, energy fluctuations, and unexpected delays. These were not attacks but warnings, demonstrations of control. The humans wanted the Dominion to understand the Leviathan's power without causing unnecessary destruction. The alien commanders were growing desperate. Their simulations had predicted numerous outcomes, but none had prepared them for this. Every attempt to approach or probe the Leviathan resulted in failure. Ships lost synchronization, sensors became unreliable, and communications faltered. The Dominion fleet was effectively immobilized by a single human vessel, and the realization struck fear into even the most experienced generals. On Earth, humans monitored the situation with focused attention. They knew that patience was their greatest weapon. The Dominion's panic was visible even through distant sensors, and the humans allowed it to unfold naturally. They did not need to attack. The message had already been delivered. Humanity was no longer a species to be dismissed or underestimated. The presence of the Leviathan alone was enough to reshape the perception of their civilization across the galaxy. As hours passed, the Dominion fleet began to withdraw slightly, testing the boundaries of the Leviathan's reach. The humans observed every movement, recording patterns, weaknesses, and reactions. They were learning as much about the aliens as the aliens were learning about them. Every decision made by the Dominion commanders was analyzed, cataloged, and anticipated. Humanity was gaining a strategic advantage simply by remaining calm and prepared. Inside the Leviathan, crew members moved through their stations with quiet efficiency. Sensors, navigation, energy, communications all were functioning at peak performance. The crew understood that this moment was historic. They were the first humans to project power into the wider galaxy in a way that could not be ignored. Their mission was not to conquer, but to establish presence and authority. And in this they had already succeeded. The Dominion generals, meanwhile, struggled to maintain composure. Orders were given and rescinded, plans made and discarded as they tried to find a way to regain control of the situation. Every action they took only confirmed the Leviathan's dominance. It was clear that human technology and strategy were far beyond what they had anticipated. For the first time, the Dominion realized that the humans were not a minor species, they were a force, capable of challenging even the most advanced fleets. The Leviathan's presence also had a psychological effect on the Dominion crews. They had been trained to expect resistance, battle, and tactical challenges. They had faced numerous species and had crushed opposition with superior firepower and coordination. But the Leviathan was different. It did not attack. It did not threaten in the usual ways. Its mere presence caused confusion, hesitation, and fear. The aliens were forced to confront a new reality. That strength could be silent, intelligence could be decisive, and humans could project power without aggression. The humans aboard the Leviathan understood the impact of their actions. They were shaping the galaxy's perception of Earth not through destruction, but through demonstration. They were showing that humans were capable, disciplined, and prepared. They were proving that Earth would no longer be ignored or dismissed. Every system operating at peak efficiency, every maneuver executed flawlessly, every reaction anticipated, all contributed to a narrative of competence and power. As the Dominion fleet slowly began to retreat further, the humans maintained their vigil. They did not pursue, they did not celebrate. Their goal had been achieved through presence and strategy alone. The Leviathan had projected humanity's strength into space without firing a single shot, and the ripple effect of this demonstration would be felt across the galaxy. On Earth, the news of the Leviathan's deployment remained classified, known only to those involved in the operation. The general population continued their lives, unaware that humanity had just projected its influence beyond the solar system. Scientists and engineers continued their work, knowing that the Leviathan was not just a ship, it was a symbol, a warning, and a promise. The Dominion, meanwhile, attempted to analyze the Leviathan from a distance. They sent fleets to nearby sectors to collect data, hoping to understand how a single vessel could exert such influence. But their efforts were slow and inefficient, hampered by the ship's advanced technology. Every attempt to probe, every maneuver to gather information, only reinforced the reality that humans were now a species to be respected, not ignored. The Leviathan systems continued to operate flawlessly. Energy levels remained stable, propulsion systems maintained precise control, and defensive measures were ready but unused. The humans were in complete command of their environment. They did not need to act aggressively to establish dominance. The ship's mere presence communicated a message that no fleet could ignore. Humanity had arrived, fully prepared to defend itself and its interests. Days passed, and the Dominion fleet gradually withdrew from the immediate vicinity of Jupiter. Even at a distance, they remained cautious, aware that the Leviathan could reach them if provoked. The psychological impact of the humans' silent demonstration was profound. Across the Dominion command structure, reassessments were underway. Strategies that had worked against countless species before now seemed inadequate. Humanity was no longer an unknown quantity. It was a variable that could not be ignored. On board the Leviathan, crew members maintained their routines with unwavering focus. Every detail mattered: monitoring, observing, recording. They understood that history was being written, that their actions were shaping the galaxy's perception of Earth. And while the humans remained calm and disciplined, the knowledge of their accomplishment created a quiet pride among them. They had not fired a weapon, yet they had demonstrated power, intelligence, and control. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was ready. The Dominion would think twice before engaging humans again. Their fleets would be cautious, their strategies altered, and their assumptions challenged. The Leviathan had done more than defend Earth. It had established a presence, a symbol, and a precedent. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never see them in the same way again. As the Leviathan orbited silently around Jupiter, the humans aboard remained vigilant. They had achieved their immediate goal, but the work was not over. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown civilizations, threats, and challenges. The Leviathan's mission had been to assert presence and power, and it had done so with unparalleled success. But humanity knew that patience, discipline, and readiness were just as important as technology. The Dominion forces had learned a valuable lesson. The humans were not to be underestimated. They were not weak. The Vega system had long been considered a quiet corner of space, a place where the Dominion believed its authority went unchallenged. It was a routine checkpoint, a location for patrols and monitoring. But that calm would not last. Humanity had entered the wider galaxy, and the Leviathan's presence had already sent ripples across Dominion territory. The system was about to become the stage for the first true confrontation between humans and the Dominion, and no one on either side fully understood the consequences. For the humans aboard the Leviathan, the approach to Vega was careful and precise. Sensors scanned every asteroid, every debris field, every potential anomaly. Communications channels were monitored for any sign of Dominion activity. The crew knew that this system would likely host the first serious test of their capabilities, but they were calm. Years of preparation, simulations, and training had led to this moment. They were ready. The Dominion, on the other hand, was confident. Their fleet had patrolled Vega countless times, enforcing authority and ensuring obedience among smaller civilizations. When the first alerts came in about unusual energy readings, Dominion officers assumed it was a minor disturbance, perhaps a rogue asteroid, a failed human experiment, or an anomaly in the system. Nothing, they believed, could rival their fleet's power. But as the scouts moved closer, they began to experience the same disturbances as near Jupiter. Sensors flickered, targeting systems became unreliable, and communications channels distorted. The Dominion ships that had once operated with precision now faltered. Confusion spread among the crews. Officers whispered anxiously. This was no natural phenomenon. This was deliberate, and it was human. The Leviathan remained just beyond the main detection range, observing silently. It did not need to attack. Its presence alone was enough to command attention. Every subtle adjustment of its orbit, every pulse of energy projected from its systems was calculated to create maximum disruption without endangering life. The humans were demonstrating power through control, not destruction, a lesson the Dominion would learn in ways they could not ignore. As the Dominion fleet gathered in the Vega system, a task force was ordered to confront the Leviathan directly. This was meant to be a simple show of force. Send a fleet to the coordinates and demand identification. But as the fleet approached, systems began failing. Sensors went offline. Engines misfired. Communications cut in and out. Officers struggled to maintain control, but it became increasingly clear that their carefully planned mission was unraveling. From the Leviathan's bridge, the crew watched calmly. They analyzed the Dominion ship's movements, predicting each course adjustment, each attempt to regain control. The humans had not fired a shot, yet the alien fleet was paralyzed, forced to act within constraints set by the Leviathan. It was a demonstration of strategy and intelligence that no conventional weapon could achieve. Then a communication channel opened, a voice echoing through the fleet. It was human, calm, authoritative. You are trespassing near protected human colonies. Withdraw immediately. Further aggression will be met with defensive action. The message was simple, direct, and chilling in its implication. The humans were not making threats, they were stating facts. The Dominion had long relied on intimidation, overwhelming force, and psychological manipulation to maintain control. Now, they were confronted with a species that could project power without firing a shot, that could command attention with presence alone. For a moment, the Dominion officers hesitated. Some wanted to respond with force to show the humans they would not be intimidated. Others argued for retreat, recognizing the danger of engaging a ship whose capabilities they could not fully comprehend. The disagreement escalated quickly. In the Dominion hierarchy, hesitation was rare. Commanders were trained to act decisively, yet here uncertainty dominated every decision. As the fleet wavered, small failures began to cascade through their systems. Targeting arrays shut down. Navigation became erratic. Energy fields fluctuated. The Leviathan's subtle defensive measures created disruptions that were impossible to counter with conventional tactics. Officers shouted orders that went unheeded. Panic began to spread. The humans observed without interference. They did not celebrate or gloat. Their goal was simple: show the Dominion that Earth was no longer to be dismissed. The Leviathan's systems allowed them to maintain complete control over their own environment, while subtly undermining the enemy's systems. It was a display of precision, discipline, and intelligence. Qualities that humans had cultivated for decades, now on full display in deep space. On the Dominion flagship, the commanding general grew frustrated. Identify the threat. Engage if necessary. This is unacceptable. He pounded his fists on the console, but every attempt to assert control failed. The Leviathan had anticipated their movements, their signals, their tactics. Every command sent to the fleet was delayed, distorted, or rendered ineffective. The tension reached a breaking point when one Dominion cruiser suddenly drifted off course, systems offline. Another followed. It became clear that the humans were not just defending themselves, they were dominating the battlefield without attacking. The psychological impact was immense. Crews who had faced countless enemies, who had seen worlds fall under Dominion rule, now realized they were powerless against a single human vessel. The human message through the communication channel remained calm and unwavering. You are entering restricted space. Withdraw immediately. Any aggression will result in defensive measures. This is your only warning. No one on the Dominion side knew exactly what the Leviathan was capable of. Its weapons were untested in this confrontation. Its systems were unfamiliar. Its technology seemed to defy their understanding. Every simulation had failed to predict the outcomes of direct engagement. And in that uncertainty, fear grew. The human crew maintained focus. Engineers monitored energy levels. Navigators tracked every Dominion movement, and strategists analyzed potential outcomes. They were prepared to respond if provoked, but they did not need to. Their goal was to assert presence, demonstrate capability, and protect human colonies. Every maneuver was deliberate, designed to achieve maximum impact without unnecessary violence. The Dominion fleet began to retreat slowly, carefully, trying to maintain some semblance of order. Even as they withdrew, the Leviathan remained vigilant, projecting energy fields that ensured the humans maintained control over the situation. The aliens were forced to respect boundaries they had never recognized before, learning that brute force alone would not suffice against a species capable of such intelligence and discipline. On Earth, scientists and engineers monitored the unfolding events. For them, the confrontation was historic. Humanity had demonstrated in a single engagement that they could project power beyond the solar system. They had shown that Earth would no longer be dismissed as a minor civilization. The Leviathan had achieved its mission without firing a single weapon, relying instead on control, strategy, and foresight. The psychological impact of this encounter would be long-lasting. Across the Dominion, commanders reassessed strategies, fleets were repositioned, and caution replaced confidence. The galaxy was beginning to see humanity in a new light, capable, disciplined, and unpredictable. The Leviathan, having asserted dominance without aggression, continued its watch over the Vega system. Its crew remained vigilant, understanding that this was only the beginning. The first confrontation had ended without battle, but the message was clear. Humanity had arrived in the wider galaxy, and any attempt to challenge it would come at a cost far higher than the Dominion had ever imagined. The calm of space returned, but tension lingered. The Dominion had learned a valuable lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their intelligence, strategy, and technology were formidable, and the Leviathan had demonstrated this clearly. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread about a human ship that could immobilize fleets without firing a shot. Legends were forming before the first battle had even occurred. For the humans aboard the Leviathan, there was quiet satisfaction. Their mission had been accomplished. They had protected their colonies, demonstrated their capabilities, and sent a clear warning to the galaxy. Yet they remained disciplined, focused on the work ahead. The Vega system was just one of many locations where humanity would assert presence, and the Leviathan would continue to serve as both shield and symbol. The Dominion, shaken and cautious, withdrew entirely from the immediate area. Officers debated, generals strategized, but one truth had become undeniable. The humans had changed the balance of power. They were no longer a species to be ignored or underestimated. The Leviathan had proven that humanity could project strength, intelligence, and strategy across the stars. And as the humans maintained their vigil, orbiting silently among the planets of Vega, the galaxy began to understand that Earth was no longer an isolated world. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage with confidence, discipline, and precision, and the Dominion would never view them the same way again. The confrontation had ended without destruction, but it had accomplished everything the humans had intended. Presence had replaced firepower, strategy had replaced brute force, and intelligence had replaced assumptions. Humanity had sent a message to the galaxy: respect Earth or face the consequences. The Dominion war room was in chaos. Commanders and generals had never experienced a situation like this. Their fleets, once feared across countless star systems, were paralyzed not by firepower, not by overwhelming numbers, but by a single human vessel, the Leviathan. Reports from scouts, probes, and reconnaissance fleets were coming in one after another, describing the same thing: systems failing, communications disrupted, engines misfiring, and crews struggling to maintain control. The situation was unlike anything the Dominion had encountered. One of the senior generals, known for his calm demeanor, paced in front of a massive hollow map displaying the positions of fleets and planets. The images flickered as data streams tried and failed to update accurately. "We cannot continue like this," he said, his voice tense but controlled. "We cannot engage a force we do not understand. Every attempt to advance has failed. Every simulation shows the same outcome: We are being outmaneuvered without a shot being fired." Other generals nodded silently, though some still refused to admit the reality of their situation. Pride and history weighed heavily on them. For centuries, the Dominion had relied on superiority, intimidation, and overwhelming firepower. They had crushed countless species and conquered many star systems. The thought of retreat, of acknowledging a force beyond their control, was unthinkable. Yet the evidence was clear, undeniable, and terrifying. Reports continued to arrive from the Vega system. Dominion fleets had attempted to confront the Leviathan directly, following standard procedures for engagement, yet every maneuver had been thwarted. Ships drifted off course, weapons malfunctioned, and communications became distorted. The humans were not attacking aggressively. They did not need to. Their presence alone was sufficient to paralyze the Dominion forces and force hesitation. In the war room, the debate grew heated. Some generals argued for escalation, send more ships, overwhelm the human vessel, destroy it before it could project further influence. Others cautioned restraint, insisting that further action would only lead to disaster. Every argument was backed by simulations and historical precedent, yet every simulation failed to account for the Leviathan's capabilities. No one had a solution. Finally, the senior general raised his hand, demanding silence. "Listen to me," he said. "We are facing a force beyond our understanding. They are intelligent, prepared, and capable of controlling outcomes without conventional weapons. Every action we take against them results in failure, disruption, or confusion. We cannot continue to treat this as a normal engagement." He paused, letting his words sink in. Around the room, officers exchanged uneasy glances. Pride battled fear. Confidence battled reality. But the senior general pressed on. "Our fleets are at risk. Our crews are faltering. We cannot allow further losses, not because of battle, but because of hesitation, miscalculation, and fear. We must issue a withdrawal order, immediately. Every vessel is to retreat to safe positions, and we must reassess our strategy." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Withdrawal was a word rarely spoken in the Dominion. Retreat was seen as weakness, a stain on the reputation of a species that had dominated countless civilizations. Yet there was no other choice. Every option had been exhausted. Every plan had failed. The humans aboard the Leviathan had shown them that force alone would not win this encounter. Orders were transmitted, first to the fleets closest to the Leviathan, and then to those positioned throughout the Vega system. Every captain received the same instruction. Pull back immediately, avoid engagement, and maintain defensive readiness. The withdrawal was precise but tense. No one wanted to leave vulnerable. Yet everyone understood the necessity. The humans had demonstrated a level of control and power that demanded respect. As the Dominion fleets began their retreat, the Leviathan monitored their movements. Humans remained calm, maintaining their positions and systems at peak efficiency.
They did not pursue.
They did not gloat. Their mission was clear: protect human colonies, demonstrate capability, and send a message. Every maneuver, every adjustment of the ship's energy fields, every subtle interference with enemy systems reinforced the lesson the humans were teaching. Earth was no longer to be underestimated. In the Dominion command room, the tension was palpable. Officers struggled to maintain composure as they observed the retreat of their fleets. Pride, discipline, and centuries of experience clashed with the undeniable reality. The humans had forced them to withdraw. Their tactics had failed, their simulations had failed, and their assumptions had been shattered. For the first time, the Dominion faced a species that could match them in intelligence, strategy, and control, and the experience left a deep sense of unease. The psychological impact was immense. Crews who had faced countless enemies, who had witnessed destruction and conquest across the galaxy, were forced to acknowledge their vulnerability. The humans had not fired a single weapon. They had not destroyed a fleet. Yet the effect was undeniable. The Dominion had been forced to retreat, their pride wounded, their authority questioned. On board the Leviathan, the crew continued their disciplined routine. Engineers monitored energy outputs, navigators tracked every fleet movement, and officers recorded every reaction of the Dominion forces. They understood that history was being made. Humanity had projected power into the galaxy in a way that did not rely on brute force, and the lessons would ripple far beyond Vega. The withdrawal order spread through the Dominion territories. Fleets repositioned, commands were reviewed, and simulations rerun. Across multiple sectors, the story of the human vessel began to circulate. It was not just a tale of power. It was a demonstration of discipline, intelligence, and control. Humanity had achieved what few thought possible. They had changed the perception of an entire species without engaging in battle. Meanwhile, the humans maintained their watch. They did not celebrate or boast. They understood the importance of their actions. This was not a victory in the traditional sense, but it was a strategic success of unprecedented magnitude. They had protected human colonies, asserted their presence, and shown the galaxy that Earth was no longer an isolated, insignificant world. Back on Earth, scientists and engineers followed reports from the Leviathan closely. Every success, every measured move reinforced their belief in the power of preparation, intelligence, and discipline. Humanity had proven that careful planning, combined with advanced technology and strategic insight, could shape the course of events far beyond their own solar system. The Dominion, for its part, could not ignore what had happened. Their generals debated, strategized, and analyzed every detail. What had once been a routine engagement had turned into a profound lesson. Humans were not a species to be underestimated. Their intelligence, their discipline, and their capability to control outcomes without aggression had forced an empire to reconsider its assumptions. The Leviathan remained in orbit, vigilant and ready. Its crew knew that the galaxy would watch their next moves closely. They also knew that patience was their greatest weapon. The Dominion had been forced to retreat, but this was only the beginning of a larger story. Humans had shown their power, but the galaxy was vast and challenges were inevitable. Preparation, discipline, and strategy would continue to guide them. The calm that followed the withdrawal was tense but purposeful. Humans maintained their routines aboard the Leviathan, monitoring every signal, adjusting every system, and recording every observation. They understood that this moment was historic, not just for humanity, but for the wider galaxy. The Dominion had learned, as had countless other civilizations, that humans were a species to be respected, and that their capabilities went far beyond what had been assumed. The ripple effect of the withdrawal spread across the galaxy. Reports reached distant systems. Commanders of other species debated what it meant, and the reputation of Earth began to shift. Humans had projected power, intelligence, and strategy without firing a single shot, and the galaxy would remember this moment for generations. On board the Leviathan, the crew remained disciplined, focused, and ready. They knew the importance of their mission and the weight of history on their shoulders. They had achieved what few believed possible. They had forced an empire to retreat through skill, intelligence, and presence alone. And yet they understood that the work was not done. Humanity's place in the galaxy had been established, but vigilance, preparation, and strategy would continue to guide them as they navigated the challenges ahead. For the Dominion, the retreat was humbling. Pride was tempered by fear, experience challenged by uncertainty. They had encountered a species that could outthink them, outmaneuver them, and dominate without aggression. The lesson was clear: underestimate humanity at your own peril. The Leviathan continued its orbit around Vega, a silent sentinel and symbol of Earth's new presence. Humans aboard remained watchful, disciplined, and ready. They had shown the galaxy that Earth was no longer to be dismissed, that its people were capable of strategy, intelligence, and power far beyond what had been imagined. The withdrawal order marked a turning point in the galaxy. Humanity had proven that force was not the only measure of strength, that intelligence and preparation could shape outcomes, and that Earth would no longer be an unnoticed world. The Dominion fleets had retreated, not defeated by W. The withdrawal of the Dominion fleet marked a turning point for humanity. Across the galaxy, reports of the Leviathan's demonstration spread quickly, first through Dominion channels, then whispered among independent star systems and trading fleets. Humanity, once considered a minor and insignificant species, was now recognized as a force that could not be ignored. The Leviathan had achieved more than tactical success. It had shifted the perception of an entire galaxy. On board the Leviathan, the crew remained focused. There was no celebration, no applause. They understood the weight of what they had accomplished, but also the responsibility that came with it. Humanity had proven that it could project power, intelligence, and strategy across interstellar distances. But the galaxy was vast, full of unknown civilizations, potential threats, and unpredictable variables. Vigilance, discipline, and preparation would remain their guiding principles. The ship's systems continued to operate at peak efficiency. Sensors scanned every nearby sector. Navigators calculated optimal positions to maintain observation and readiness, and engineers monitored energy levels to ensure the Leviathan could respond to any threat without warning. Every action was deliberate, every system was precise, and every crew member understood the importance of their role. Back on Earth, governments, scientists, and engineers closely monitored updates from the Leviathan. The reality of humanity's new place in the galaxy began to sink in. Earth was no longer isolated, no longer a backwater world easily dismissed. The success of the Leviathan was proof that humanity had evolved technologically, strategically, and intellectually to compete on a galactic scale. In the Dominion's territory, the impact was profound. Generals held emergency councils to reassess fleet deployments and defensive strategies. Commanders across multiple star systems were instructed to treat humans with caution, to avoid unnecessary confrontation, and to recognize that Earth was no longer a target to exploit. Confidence in their traditional tactics had been shaken, and the realization that humans could project influence without aggression unsettled even the most seasoned officers. Small fleets were repositioned, defensive measures strengthened, and intelligence missions increased. The Dominion had learned a lesson they would not forget. Humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, strategists, and a civilization capable of reshaping galactic balance. And this lesson had been delivered without the Leviathan firing a single shot. Meanwhile, the humans aboard the Leviathan focused on observation and readiness. While the Dominion fleets had retreated, humanity knew that other civilizations would soon take notice. Some might be curious, others wary, and a few might be hostile. Preparation was key. Every maneuver, every scan, and every record of the Dominion's reactions contributed to a growing database of strategic intelligence. The humans were learning as much as they were teaching. The Leviathan's presence also had a profound psychological effect. Across multiple star systems, beings who had heard of the human vessel began to reconsider their assumptions. Earth was no longer a distant, insignificant planet. Humans were capable, disciplined, and intelligent. The Leviathan had demonstrated a new model of power: control through strategy, influence through precision, and dominance through intelligence rather than brute force. As the ship maintained its orbit near Vega, humans studied not only the Dominion, but also the broader region. Communication signals, trade routes, and patrol patterns were analyzed. They cataloged anomalies, potential threats, and opportunities for alliances. Humanity had entered the galaxy as a cautious but confident participant. Their technology allowed them to project authority without aggression, to influence outcomes without conflict, and to ensure their colonies were secure. On board, the crew continued their daily routines, disciplined and focused. Engineers calibrated energy systems to maintain long-term operational stability. Navigators charted sectors that had yet to be explored, anticipating future missions. Officers monitored Dominion movements, recording and analyzing every pattern. Every task reinforced humanity's readiness and strategic advantage. For the humans aboard, the lesson was clear. Power did not always require weapons, and influence could be projected without destruction. The Leviathan had achieved a balance of strength and restraint, demonstrating that intelligence and preparation could shape events as effectively as fleets or firepower. This was a philosophy that would guide humanity as they expanded further into the galaxy. Across the Dominion's territories, commanders adjusted their expectations. Smaller species and independent fleets who had previously considered humans insignificant began to recognize the shift in balance. Reports of a single human vessel immobilizing a Dominion fleet without firing a shot became almost legendary. Stories spread, cautionary tales circulated, and strategic doctrines were revised. Earth had entered the galaxy not with conquest, but with a presence that demanded respect. The Leviathan's crew remained vigilant, understanding that other civilizations might now seek to test humanity's capabilities. Intelligence and observation became paramount. They monitored trade routes, planetary colonies, and communication channels. Every system scan was an opportunity to learn, to anticipate, and to maintain the advantage humanity had established. They were guardians, diplomats, and strategists all at once. The human approach to interstellar presence emphasized careful planning, discipline, and strategic foresight. Unlike other civilizations, humanity did not rely solely on overwhelming force. They understood that patience, intelligence, and preparation could achieve outcomes that weapons alone could not. The Leviathan embodied this philosophy. A vessel capable of defending Earth, protecting colonies, and projecting influence while remaining measured and deliberate. Meanwhile, Dominion commanders continued to analyze their failures. They could not comprehend how a single vessel had disrupted entire fleets and forced a withdrawal. Simulations were rerun, strategies recalculated, but the gap in understanding remained. Humanity had demonstrated a level of ingenuity and adaptability that few civilizations had ever witnessed. And the realization unsettled even the most experienced officers. On Earth, the crew of the Leviathan was recognized within classified circles as pioneers and guardians. Their actions had changed the galaxy's perception of humanity, proving that Earth was no longer a backwater world. Scientists and engineers understood that every system aboard the ship, every tactical decision, and every strategic maneuver had contributed to a demonstration of unprecedented capability. Beyond the Dominion, whispers of the Leviathan reached independent civilizations, traders, and explorers. Earth was no longer an isolated planet. The story of the human vessel inspired curiosity and caution alike. Some species sought alliances, others reinforced defenses, and many simply watched, waiting to understand what this new human presence meant for the broader balance of power. As the Leviathan continued its silent orbit, the humans on board contemplated the future. Their mission had been a success. Earth's colonies were safe, Dominion fleets had been forced to withdraw, and humanity had established a new reputation in the galaxy. Yet they knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown civilizations, challenges, and opportunities. Preparation, intelligence, and discipline would continue to guide them. The withdrawal of the Dominion fleet had sent a powerful message. Humanity was capable, strategic, and intelligent. They could defend themselves and assert their presence without unnecessary aggression. Across the galaxy, this became a new model for power. Stories of the Leviathan's capabilities spread, and even those who had never encountered humans personally began to adjust their assumptions. Earth had arrived on the galactic stage, and its influence would grow steadily and deliberately. The Leviathan's crew maintained their vigilance, understanding that influence and readiness were inseparable. Every observation, every system check, every calculation was part of a larger strategy to ensure humanity's security and expand its reach responsibly. The ship was both a shield and a symbol, a testament to human ingenuity, discipline, and strategic foresight. As days turned into weeks, reports continued to confirm the impact of the Leviathan's demonstration. The Dominion fleets remained cautious. Independent civilizations began to monitor human movements. Trade and communication patterns shifted subtly in response to the new perception of Earth. Humanity's presence had altered the galactic landscape without a single destructive engagement. The humans aboard the Leviathan knew that reputation was as valuable as firepower. They continued to demonstrate control, intelligence, and readiness through presence, observation, and discipline. Their strategy was clear: establish humanity as a capable, respected force while minimizing unnecessary conflict. The galaxy had learned to take notice, and the Leviathan's orbit around Vega became a symbol of Earth's new status. For the crew, the knowledge of their success was both humbling and empowering. They had protected colonies, safeguarded fleets, and reshaped galactic perceptions. They had accomplished this without traditional warfare, proving that preparation, intelligence, and strategy could be more powerful than conventional force. Humanity had entered a new era, one defined by capability, foresight, and responsibility. Across the stars, civilizations continued to take note. Earth